Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're adopting a truly professional, psychotherapeutic attitude to conduct a profound exploration into something genuinely groundbreaking. We're going to unpack a fascinating new methodology that bridges intense, physical, somatic meditation with advanced artificial intelligence. Our goal here is to deeply examine a method designed for resolving those stubborn clinical impasses, the ones that leave both therapists and clients completely stagnating. So, if you've ever wondered how modern analytical tools can intertwine with ancient somatic practices to totally enhance therapeutic healing, well, you are absolutely in the right place.
It's a scenario literally every mental health professional knows intimately. You're sitting with a client, you're actively listening, you are deploying every ounce of your clinical training, but out of nowhere, you hit an empathic wall. You just cannot access or truly grasp the client's deepest emotional state. It's a total impasse. Your traditional cognitive tools just aren't reaching the core of the trauma or the blockage. So, the big clinical question we are exploring today is this. When our standard, reliable therapeutic toolkit falls short, how do we systematically facilitate a breakthrough? How do we get to the core trauma when the mind alone just can't get us there?
To answer that, here is our roadmap. We'll be looking at overcoming clinical bottlenecks, active somatic meditation, empathy through role-play, externalization using AI, and finally, how all this forms a new methodology.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, overcoming clinical bottlenecks. So our source material gets really specific about defining this bottleneck. It's not just a slow day or a lack of progress. It's a critical moment where the therapeutic alliance grinds to a halt because the lived visceral experience of the client remains entirely out of reach for the therapist. As a practitioner, you might totally understand their pain on an intellectual level, but you can't enter it emotionally. And honestly, that creates a massive barrier to holistic healing. To bypass this wall, we need a method that steps completely outside the realm of purely intellectual analysis. Which leads us to part 2, active somatic meditation. To resolve this profound clinical impasse, the methodology turns to somatic processing through active meditation. And we're not talking about just sitting quietly on a cushion. This approach utilizes intensive, high-energy techniques derived from Osho active meditations. We're talking dynamic, vigorous bodily movement, actually speaking in gibberish to bypass language entirely, intense vocal release, and highly focused breath work. All of this happens in a heavily contained, closed-eye, ultra-safe environment. Practitioners use these intense tools to carve out a supportive space for pure, unfiltered physical expression. By engaging the body this intensely, the therapist actually begins to untangle their own emotional knots, physically preparing themselves for much deeper empathic work. And here is why this is so absolutely crucial. This highly active environment allows the practitioner to completely bypass the rigid, analytical mind. Think about it. When you are moving dynamically and breathing that intensely, your usual cognitive defenses, they just drop. As the source notes, by following the stream of consciousness with your eyes closed, any emerging image becomes a direct catalyst for catharsis. The therapist achieves this incredible state of direct bodily release, opening up a state of heightened somatic receptivity.
But you might be thinking, how does the therapist having a personal catharsis actually help the client sitting in their clinic? Well, that brings us to part 3, empathy through role-play.
The specific technique used during this meditation is, quite frankly, remarkable. The practitioner literally brings their clinical impasse directly into the meditative space. They don't leave their work at the door, they actively invite it in. First, they focus on that specific clinical bottleneck. Second, in that vulnerable state of lowered cognitive defense we just talked about, they allow images of the client to naturally surface in their mind's eye. And third, and this is where the magic happens, they use their own physical body to role-play the client's struggles. They literally, physically embody the tension, the fear, or the grief that the client is facing.
This brilliantly illustrates the empathic shift. When a therapist embodies a client's trauma through this intense physical role-play, that bodily release translates directly into a visceral, lived understanding. The previously inaccessible pain of the client, it's no longer just a clinical theory. It has been physically felt and processed by the therapist. This effectively shatters the clinical bottleneck, allowing the therapist to walk back into the clinical setting with a profound, deeply embodied understanding of the client's emotional landscape.
But feeling it is really only half the battle, right? The other half is making it clinically actionable. Let's look at part 4, externalization using AI.
There is a really stark, fascinating contrast here between the internal and external processes. On one side, we have the internal process. It's chaotic, it's intense, it's driven by conscious flow, and it results in emotional untangling and raw physical vitality. But on the other side, we have the external process. And this is highly structured.
We are taking those raw, abstract somatic feelings generated during the meditation and pulling them out into the real world. To do this, the methodology relies on deep AI dialogue, spatial sandplay, and artistic materialization to firmly anchor these revelations.
This is where advanced AI technology becomes an absolute game changer as an integration tool. Alongside more traditional, tactile methods like sandplay and artistic creation, AI acts as an incredible analytical canvas. The therapist engages in deep, structured dialogue with AI tools, essentially feeding it the raw, untangled insights gained from their somatic roleplay. Using narrative research methodologies, the AI then helps sort, analyze, and structure these profound emotional experiences into manageable, highly externalized clinical data. It literally transforms a deeply personal, physical epiphany into objective knowledge that can be reviewed, studied, and directly applied in the very next therapy session.
This harmonious blending of the intensely physical with the highly analytical leads us right into Part 5, a new methodology.
The source highlights a truly beautiful cyclical benefit to this entire system. Step 1 is entirely internal. The practitioner achieves deep emotional calmness, physical vitality, and crucial self-care through the active meditation. Essentially, they heal themselves while simultaneously unblocking their clinical work. Step 2 is external. That newfound inner clarity directly fuels the creation, packaging, and advocacy of this new clinical model. By using AI to structure the theory, practitioners can easily share this knowledge, creating a robust, actionable framework that other therapists around the world can learn from. It's an incredible, self-sustaining cycle of personal healing and professional development.
Which brings us to a really compelling final thought. We've seen how bridging the raw, visceral power of somatic release with the structured, logical processing of modern AI analysis can shatter even the toughest clinical walls. It forces us to ask a big question. As our tools become more and more advanced, is this seamless integration of body, mind, and artificial intelligence the ultimate key to the future of holistic psychotherapy? It's a profound consideration for absolutely anyone invested in the clinical evolution of healing. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep exploring.